Hi my friends, this is Dave Phelps here. I wanted to record a short video and tell you about ReScape California's 8 principles and also tell you a little bit about the upcoming online trainings that ReScape California has. It's pretty exciting. It'd be kind of fun just to show you a quick preview of the ReScape California principles because they have changed. There were 7 and now there's 8. So Bay Friendly, the Bay Friendly Coalition, which spun off into 2 different river friendlies, blended with Eco Landscape and the Green Gardeners. Everyone is now earth friendly, and sustainability has become regenerative landscaping. And it's all happening at ReScape California, a nonprofit organization that's giving out some really cool trainings, certifications, ratings, all sorts of great information. You got to check them out. And the really coolest thing is the principles, really, because it's a holistic system. It's all integrated. There's a broad context that has to do with life as we know it, especially now when we've got so much change coming on and so many stressors on the environment and our minds. Promoting partnerships with different associations and agencies and the community at large, and really the bottom line is creating change. Change in the landscape and change in our lives, change in our environment. Very exciting. And I like to think of this, at least I used to, as the 7 habits of highly effective landscapers. Now I know Dr. Covey was thinking about something else, but now that we've added the 8th principle, I guess this may not make sense anymore. These are the old principles. And it really was a cohesive, holistic, systematic approach. It made perfect sense. And actually the 8th principle is in every single one of these principles. It's just that we wanted, because of climate change, to make it really stand out. We decided to, just say, let's just make it a principle so that we really hammer it home. But you'll see the 8th principle in every single one of these principles. So these are the 8. And I'll go over them really quickly. You'll see how they blend together. So there were some changes. Wildlife habitat became create habitat. It's more action-centered. Create local, or landscape locally, turned into act local. Less to the landfill, right, because that's kind of how this started, became reduce waste, and conserve water turned out to be save water. And then water and air quality, which doesn't really tell you to do anything, turned into protect water and air. So it has more of an action. These are tasks we can take. And so the first one, or at least what I think of as the first one, is less to the landfill. And that's really because stopwaste.org started this whole thing back in the day to reduce stuff going to the landfill. But now really we just think about it in terms of reducing waste. And ways we can do that, a big one is appropriate planting. If you're putting plants that are too big and getting out over the right-of-way and onto walkways and driveways, and they constantly need to be pruned or removed because they were planted too densely, and they need a whole bunch of hedging or pruning, no good, right? So we want to plant plants that are appropriate for their space. We also want to avoid, obviously, invasive plants, because they can harm our native ecologies and hinder our native plants from growing, but also they need to be removed, so that would be more waste. And if we can get rid of or very much limit the hedge shears and move more towards natural pruning, that would be wonderful. It used to be a requirement of no shearing to get rated. That's no longer the case, because I think folks have realized that there is a place for a hedge trimmer, but it's a very limited use. It's not should not be the go-to tool of choice. So water and fertilize responsibly. I think we all see the waste that goes into our streams and our watershed, what we call urban drool. But it's a waste of water, yeah, especially if it's potable water. And then also fertilizing, right? If we put on too much fertilizer, it's not going to do the plants any good. We're just going to get a bunch of homopterous insects, and the fertilizer is going to go down the drain and cause problems. Using recycled content, absolutely. Throughout the landscape, we can use all kinds of recycled content. I think my favorite is recycled base rock that used to be concrete. We want to reuse plant debris through compost and mulch. This is creating the cycle. This carbon cycle has everything to do with taking the natural drop and the green waste that is produced from our sites and pumping it back into the soil. Grass cycling, you know, I mean, there is a time perhaps in the winter months, if you've got to mow that turf, that you're going to have to take the grass out, but it should be composted and put back in. The rest of the season, if you're mowing and you're not recycling that into the duff layer, that's crazy to be hauling that off site. There's nitrogen and nutrients in those clippings. Reduce and recycle construction debris. Yeah, we've got to have a plan, right? So that construction debris gets minimized, it gets sorted, it does not go in the landfill. And then conserving water was the old one. Now we know it's save water. We all need to save water. It's the new normal in California. Water is precious. We need to store it, save it, and use it effectively. So we're partnering with water agencies and municipalities, building drought-resistant soils that hold on to water. We are minimizing and eliminating wasteful lawns that take a ridiculous amount of our water. You know, lawns like this are okay back east, or, you know, where it rains in the summer, but we don't get rain for like 7 months or more at a time. And lawns really don't make sense unless they have a dedicated recreational use. And then we're promoting hydrozoning, which is organizing plants into water use groups and putting them on separate valves so that we can be super efficient in our irrigating. We're putting in climate appropriate plants. These are plants that have co-evolved in Mediterranean climates. So we're looking at New Zealand, Australian, South African, Chilean, these plants that, and of course California natives, that they've evolved in our similar climates. And we're using high efficiency irrigation, right? So this means smart controllers, it means really nice check valve equipped inline drip tubing, match precipitation, mini rotors, and rotating sprinklers. Amazing what's happened in the irrigation industry. We need to take full advantage of that to save water. And of course, you can't manage what you don't measure. So we need to meter, monitor, and manage our water use, set water budgets, and really raise the bar of our industry in that realm. Using recycled rainwater and gray water, you know, now more than ever, buildings are being double plumbed for gray water. We've got a purple pipe coming out to more of our sites, and the opportunities for capturing and reusing rainwater are just exploding in the industry. Then we go from what was conserve energy, right? Hey, it's still conserve energy. We always want to conserve energy, and we can do that by reducing and eliminating mowing and sharing. This is going to be like hammer on the head. Let's not set up our landscapes so we have to mow and shear all the times, right? Let's look at some of those no-mows. Let's do our natural pruning. Plant trees around structures, right? We want to put in those big deciduous trees that are going to shade off the summer heat from the southwest areas, but then drop their leaves and let in that sun during the winter months. We want to reduce heat island effects by changing our hardscapes and shading our paved areas. We want to shade our air conditioners so they're not working so hard. Design efficient lighting using LEDs and putting out sensors so that the lights turn off when they're not needed, and using our new apps on our devices to control our lighting. We want to specify local products. Obviously, if stuff is being shipped by truck and containers, a huge amount of pollution, but the energy that goes into that, the fossil fuels, is just crazy. Plus, we want to support our local economies. We want to sequester carbon. Now, this is the 8th principle. We have a whole principle on this now. But, pumping that carbon into our hardwoods and into our soils is all part of conserving energy and putting the hydrocarbons where they're supposed to be. Now, water and air quality, right? That's become protect water and air. And some of the things we're looking at there is maximizing permeable surfaces, right? So that we don't want runoff anymore. We want to use permeable asphalt, permeable pavers, permeable concrete, porous pave. There's all kinds of cool surfaces that we can use to infiltrate the water and recharge our aquifers. We want to maintain soil cover. Mulch, mulch, mulch. It's the old master gardener chant. March, especially after our fire events on our slopes, we've got to maintain a cover on the soil. And we're looking at 3 inches of mulch, at least 2 to 3 inches, but go for that 3. Designing infiltration systems, not drainage systems, right? Good old Brad Lancaster's in his book series and all of his wonderful water puns, right? We want to slow, spread, and sink that water. Don't put the water into the downspouts and the storm drains. Keep it on site. We got to have an abundance mentality. It's exciting to think of all the ways that we can improve the aesthetics and the functionality of our landscapes by just keeping the water on site. Capturing rainwater, using it back in the structure, in the landscape. Using integrated pest management so that we're monitoring, we're knowing our plants and their potential pests. We're using control measures, the least toxic ones, synergistically to get the most bang out of our buck. Very exciting. Biological controls. This is all coming to a head now, where we're learning more about the life cycles of these all the organisms and how things are interrelated and how we can touch points to really make our landscape ecologies more functional. Minimize and eliminate lawns again, right? You see this in almost every practice. We're going to minimize or eliminate turf unless it's for a dedicated recreational use. And of course, plant trees. Let's all plant a tree today. Landscape locally. Yes. Act local, right? So this is an action center. What can we do locally now to improve our landscapes and the way that we live? We want to use a holistic approach, a watershed approach. So we're looking at from where the water hits the ridge lines and our roofs and where it falls on our parking lots and our roadways to how it gets infiltrated in our landscapes and how we can filter it, try and get plants to take it up, photosynthesize with it, and transpire. All kinds of good ways we can use the watershed approach. But also look within that watershed that the plant communities, whether it's riparian or chaparral or meadows or the oak savannas, probably some mixed evergreens, there might be a coastal scrub or a coastal shrub environment, the bluffs. Let's use these plant communities and use local native plants so that we can enhance our habitats and the beauty of our landscapes, reduce the maintenance needs. Respect the climate and the microclimates. Again, we live in a Mediterranean climate. We've got to use these dry summer adapted plants as much as possible. They're beautiful. We have a growing wide range of plants, and it's super exciting to see how we could use those. And look at our microclimates, how there might be a wind tunnel effect, there might be reflected heat, there might be a banana belt. There's all these things that could influence little parts of our landscape that we need to attune to. And of course, be fire safe. It is scary, terrifying what has happened because of climate change and our lack of prescribed burns. It's a tinderbox out there, folks, and we need to landscape appropriately and create defensible zones around our communities and where we live. You know, we want to not eliminate fire. We want to encourage these fast-moving, low-temperature fires that can just move through an area, and not the catastrophic canopy fires and what we've got going on. So living with fire, it's another new reality. We're going to have to do better. And designing with the genus loci. What is the spirit of the place? Let's make sure we've got a flow of energy through our landscapes, landscapes that make us feel good, that respect the land, respect the history. You know, we could go down the gopher hole on this one. Using local resources. Again, that's all about acting local, you know, making sure we've got the cycle of carbon within our local economy and supporting our neighbors. And then using local recycled products. Then we've got nurturing the soil. This one is the most important one to me. I just love the soil ecology and learning more about it. And so nurture the soil, and I would say nurture the living soil. So important to protect our topsoil during construction, right? If we know it's going to be crazy out there, let's set it aside, right? Have a stockpile and then use it again. Don't lose the topsoil. It's precious. And for goodness sakes, if there's roots in there from trees, we need to protect that too. Let's avoid compaction. Do what we can. We can put down mulch, protective layers, even plywood or geogrids. There are ways of protecting our soils from compaction and stopping erosion at all costs. We cannot let our topsoil go down the drain or blow away or get just, you know, beaten into dirt. That is not what we need. We need to nurture our soil and decompact and aerate those harmed soils. Bring oxygen into them. And of course, amend with compost. We want to increase our organic matter in our soil so that we can create more aggregates and increase our soil pore space. And just that will let the soil ecology do what it does best, which is nutrient cycling and emphasizing vitality and fertility. And then mulch, lots of mulch. We want to feed those microbes, all the little mites and springtails and the chipper shredders throughout the whole soil food web and our earthworms. Give them the food they need to do what they do best. And then, of course, wildlife habitat. If we do this right, folks, we're going to just see habitat go off the charts. So we're creating habitat, right? That's our principle. Create habitat, protect, conserve, restore, and not just for our endangered animals, but all life. We want to make sure that our landscapes are living landscapes and promote diversity. We know that a diverse landscape is going to be a more stable landscape. It's going to be a landscape more able to adapt to change and stress. And if we can use different plant communities and rub them against each other, those create the ecotones and that are going to drive biodiversity off the charts. And we'll have more stable landscapes. So providing water, food, and shelter to all the organisms that we can think we would want in that landscapes, and even those we don't know about. Provide pollen and nectar for pollinators. By doing this, guess what? We also make our landscapes gorgeous, beautiful, right? Stop in your tracks and go, wow, that's gorgeous. So we're also going to eliminate our harmful pesticides. We need to learn and up our game so that we know how to use beneficial insects and biocontrols and create the right kind of environment with less fertilizer and more soil organic matter, more diversity, so that we don't have these pest population explosions and we don't need to use any harmful pesticides, right? No more nicotinoids. Choosing native plants. This is a no-brainer. More and more native plants and cool cultivars of native plants are here for us to use and as part of our plant palette to create beautiful, right, a regenerative, sustainable landscapes in California. And this brings us to our 8th principle, sequester carbon. This is what we need, folks. We need it right away. We need it yesterday. We need to just focus on these principles and make sure that we make the change that needs to happen for our planet, for each other, for the biome. Understand how carbon exits the atmosphere and enters the landscape, right? I mean, this is a little bit of science, but if we understand this, we can maximize it. Promote large hardwoods so that we can capture that and sequester it and hold it in the landscape for prolonged periods of time. Cover the ground, compost, mulch, increase that soil organic matter. If there really should never be a situation where the soil is barren, right? Fallow is no longer a good way to go. We want to have cover crops, mulch. Something's got to be there. You know, I mean, otherwise it's going to be weeds and dirt. So let's turn it into soil and plants we want. Okay, work to create humus. Yes. Right? We need more humic acids, fulvic acids. We want to push the soil succession forward. We want to increase our soil organic matter and turn dirt into soil. We want to encourage mycorrhizal exuberance, right? So we have a symbiotic relationship between our plants and fungi that is just magical, and it really pumps the carbon into the soil such that it stays there for decades. We need to maximize that, folks. Really exciting how that happens. And of course, reducing or hopefully eliminating synthetic nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizers, especially nitrogen. You know, this is a fossil fuel, a non-renewable resource that we are pumping into our soil that is putting the salinity and the pH out of whack. It's creating eutrophication zones and fishery collapses. It's creating aphid explosions and homopteran insect infestations that we don't want. So please, there are good ways, and we can learn how to do all this. It's not hard. We got to reduce and eliminate excessive tilling, right? Maintain those biopores in the soil. Soil horizons are there for a reason, and we want to maximize those for the good of our plants and the health of the soil ecology. So hopefully you get a feeling for some of the exciting ways that we can use ReScape California's principles to really raise the bar of our landscapes and how we interact with the land, and we can become land stewards, right? Our place on this planet. So feed the soil, let the plants eat what they want, and add more compost. Mulch, mulch, mulch. Okay, you guys. Now, hopefully you're going to go out there and visit the ReScape California website. There's a link here. There are all kinds of really cool online trainings where you can dig deep, go down the gopher hole, figure out what you can apply in your landscapes. If you need CEUs, ReScape California's got them for you. Some really good communities, some really good discussions. I hope to see you there. All right, Dave out.